Good morning, patrons, and welcome to the May Patroncast. Yes, I know, I said good morning. I know, people like, this is actually a really common question. Like, people kind of say, why do you always say good afternoon? I don't even record in the afternoon. I kind of record in the morning into the early afternoon. I edit in the afternoon, and then, I upload in the evening, and then release something that went through that process the day before. But it is morning. It is morning right now. It's 11:30. It's 11:30 in the morning. It's actually today. It is May. It's the 31st today. And I'm determined that somehow I'm going to get this out today as well. So it's going to be in May, unless I don't, in which case you're hearing this in June, in which case you can all laugh at me in the comments. It's been a good May. It's been a very, very good May. I'm looking forward to June. Because May and April have been so damn fast. April especially was a really big growth month for us. May's not been as good as April, but that's not to be expected. You don't expect when you have a big month, the following month's going to be as big. You just expect you have a big month, and then it settles down to a new normal that is higher than it used to be, which is broadly what May's done. But we should be well on course for 200,000 subscribers in June, which is very, very cool. I don't know what I'm going to do for 200,000. I did have a plan for 200,000 all along, and it was Dark Souls. Then I got impatient and did that for 175,000. I thought, well, I'm not going to wait for 200,000. That feels like that's bloody months and months and months away. Because at that point, in January and February, growth was really slow. Really damn slow. Because it's just not a good time of the year for gaming YouTubers. There's not as many good releases, and that means less people looking for videos. And generally, it was very, very slow going in January and February. So I got impatient to do Dark Souls, and now I can't do it for 200,000. So I don't know what to do for 200,000. I'm going to need to figure it out in the next month or so. If you have an idea for something that's will be properly spectacular and unexpected and different, please do let me know. Because I genuinely am not sure what I'm going to do for 200,000. There's a couple of things I could do. Frequent ones that are requested, Red Dead Redemption and Dishonored and some form of GTA or something. I guess I could do those. They just don't feel like they've quite got that really big special, a new 100,000 punch to them. So I need to put a bit more thought into that. May has been bloody stressful as well. May has been a very, very stressful month, completely. Because the thing is, the one thing that is really stressful to do is games just as they launch. Because the thing is, normally when I do something, I can, a day ahead of time, whatever, I can record it and then edit it and then render it, then let it upload overnight. Because overnight, your internet's not going to get throttled by your service provider because, very few people are using the internet locally in the middle of the night, which is why you can kind of upload, many, many videos overnight. But if you're trying to do something the same day, like with Far Harbor, you've got to record it, and bear in mind, because my videos are heavily edited, even if the part is only 30, 40 minutes, there's probably 2 hours of footage behind that. So you need to record that for 2 hours. Once that's been recorded, my recording program needs to crunch that into a form that's just a big MP4 or something, and that takes a little bit of time. Then I need to load that into my editing program. My editing program obviously can't deal with a file that's 20 gigabytes big while it's kind of live previewing and skipping all over the place. So it now needs to crunch and create a smaller, lighter copy of that 20 gig file that it can actually work with so it can preview live. That takes a bit more time. Then the whole thing needs to be edited. That's going to take at least 2 hours because I need to watch the whole thing through, obviously. And then there's any post-production or special stuff I want to add in on top. That's maybe a little bit more time. Then it needs to render. That's even more time. Now by that point, we've got to early evening. And I can try and upload it, but then the problem is then we're in peak UK internet usage time, and all of a sudden, my internet service provider's no, everyone's trying to use the internet right now. You can't have that much of it all to yourself. We're going to throttle your usage, and all of a sudden it can take 6 hours to upload a single video, because for 3 hours in the middle, it just completely slowed down to such a crawl. It barely wasn't really uploading at all, so it just takes a very, very long time, and the rest of the time it's very, very slow as well. But I have at one point I started a video uploading at 5 p.m. and it was only just ready to go at 11 p.m. And that was a big hour-long file and everything. But even so, yeah, it can be a bit difficult, and that happened twice. Of course, you need to remember, Far Harbor and Total War Warhammer came out in the same week. Total War Warhammer, fortunately, I was able to get a little bit ahead of time. I was able to get that a few days early, so I was able to record at least a couple of parts of that before Far Harbor hit. Far Harbor, Bethesda are actually they keep their DLC really close to the chest. I was able to get review copy of Fallout 4 early, but I needed to sign like a non-disclosure agreement, like promising I wouldn't talk about it at all. Like I wouldn't even acknowledge the review copy existed until after the launch window, or rather after the embargo ended, because the embargo was one day before the general release. So like, they were very strict on that, but they did provide early review copies. With the DLC, they haven't been at all. They've provided it to a small number of beta testers, but I don't really know how they're selecting. It was like, I applied to be one, but I wasn't selected. So I've no idea how they select those guys. Like, they say they do it on, like, the basis of they want, like, a wide variety of different, like, rigs and PC setups. So, like, you know, they've tested it on the widest variety of machines from low end to high end. So, I've no reason to disbelieve that that probably is the case. But yeah, I didn't get to play the DLC early. I played it exactly when you played it, which is very, very stressful, especially after Fallout 4 DLC comes out. Because, like, Fallout's such a big part of this channel. After DLC comes out, that's, like, a daily series. And then, like, you've just got to be kind of getting it out all the time, and it's very, very stressful because I can just keep up with it, albeit like the first two parts of Far Harbor weren't in 60 FPS, they're only in 30 FPS to save me a bit of time on the rendering, to give me a better chance of getting it out like at least at a reasonable hour. But even then, like, all it does is eats into your backlog, because, like, you spend that entire week just desperately playing catch-up and trying to, like, keep on top of the daily uploads. It's very stressful. It's stressful to do, which is a bit of a shame, because it kind of takes the joy out of Fallout 4 DLC a little bit, because, like, when Fallout 4 DLC is about to come out, like, I'm equal parts, oh my god, I'm so excited there's new Fallout 4 content, as, oh god, I'm going to spend this next week desperately producing content as quickly as I can, and it's going to be so stressful. And for the first 2 days, I'm just going to be up until 2 a.m, twice in a row, just desperately making and editing and rendering and uploading as much as I can to desperately stay on top of it. It's very, very stressful. But that's all over now, I thought at the end of last week, before I realised that Hitman launches today and only comes out at 1 p.m. at the absolute earliest British time. So this afternoon's going to be fun. Oh dear. Especially as like Hitman, you don't really know how long it's going to take. Like if you happen to come across a really good way to assassinate the target quickly, that might be a really kind of quick, easy to make video. If it's a really massive level and it takes me a while to figure it out, then it could be a really long video and that will be stressful as hell. Oh, it's good. It's great fun. Thank you for your recommendations on the collaboration I kind of mentioned in the submission post, by the way, just in case those of you who like didn't see this or just like clicked through and made a comment or didn't read the actual post. I'm planning to do a slightly larger than typical collaboration because like previously, like pretty much it's always just been me and one person. People from the very, very earliest dawn of the channel may recall me and just a friend of mine, Sam, playing Borderlands, and then normally it's me and Claire, and sometimes it's me and Matt, so there's only like 2 people. I've got something a bit more ambitious planned. I don't want to say exactly what it is yet, because I don't like to, like, you know, I wouldn't mind telling you guys, but, like, I don't want to kind of spoil it. So I feel like if I just told you what it was now, you'd actually kind of get less enjoyment out of it than the people who weren't on Patreon. So, yeah. But it's an interesting little thing. Basically, it's a up to 5-player co-op game. Now, I think 5 people is a bit too many, because that's kind of like too many voices, always too much talking over each other. But I'd like to do it with 4 people. Obviously, I'll be there. Claire's on board, obviously, and I've already spoken to Matt about it, and he's interested if we can figure out, like, a good time that works for both of us. So, basically, yeah, I just need a 4th slot open for that. Thank you for people who made suggestions. Many of those in the actual original post I hadn't heard of. I will actually go and check all of those guys out. And, yeah, if you've got any other suggestions, please do leave them in the comments below this. I kind of don't have anyone particular in mind, like, you know, just try and bear in mind the very biggest YouTubers are less likely to kind of have the time or the inclination to kind of be involved in a collab with a smaller channel, which is perfectly 100% understandable. So let's move straight on to the questions, or rather to be precise, the question that actually gave me an idea for like the main thing I kind of wanted to discuss this Patroncast, which is my take on the H3H3 versus Matt Voss business. And oh, I kind of want to stay out of this one as far as possible. But I will kind of explain like my vague thoughts and why. For those of you who are not familiar with any of the players in this play, I will very briefly explain this to you, which is H3H3 is primarily a reaction channel. They react to other videos and provide their kind of humorous take on them. And Matt Voss is... well, I'm genuinely not quite sure what Matt Voss is. Matt Voss is an actor who puts out these little kind of skits, of which the main one seems to be a recurring series called The Bald Guy, where Matt Voss himself plays the bald guy, who basically, and that's bald as in brave or forward, not bald as in has no hair, though yeah, slightly odd name because it would be so impossible to tell the difference just by pronunciation alone. So he's the bald guy. Basically, in every episode, he approaches some form of like ridiculous stereotype and slightly scantily dressed woman, like the bald guy versus the vampire, where he'll go up to a goth girl who thinks she's really a vampire, and she's an actress too, obviously, and they'll engage in this really kind of awkward dialogue where like the idea is supposed to be he's seducing her, and he always successfully does seduce her, and the point of the series basically seems to be this vague implication that there's going to be nudity, but of course there never will be nudity because it's YouTube. But I don't know, I guess that's why people watch it, or I don't know, is it supposed, I really hope it's not supposed to be like a pickup artist guide or anything, because if so, it's utterly dreadful and would never work in the real world when you're not blatantly dealing with actors and actresses who are on a script, because it's really cringeworthy. I'd never heard of it before. I kind of, after this came out, I went to kind of go and like watch like a bit of it to figure out what the hell it was, and I just came away bloody confused. It is kind of awkward and cringeworthy. Like, the important thing to come out of this is basically H3H3 made a parody or mocked or reacted to Matt Voss. I can't verify that because the video in question was taken down by a copyright claim that's now going to go to court, so I can't actually watch the original. There may well be a mirror of it somewhere, but I could not find one. And as a result, H3H3 went public with this and received a large number of donations related to it, and as a result decided rather than spending all that money defending themselves, they put it all into account that can be accessed by a law firm and a couple of individuals who very often do work on behalf of video gamers who run into fair use issues. The account is called the FUPA account, or the FUPA fund, and I forget what that stands for, but it's an amusing acronym, so yes, there's a thing. Fundamentally, it is basically a decent thing that there is a fund that YouTubers can draw upon if they run into fair use issues. The problem is it will very quickly get oversubscribed and underfunded, because after this initial burst of enthusiasm, like, the big people, like, the reason that the fund is relatively well funded at the moment is because, for example, like, you know, as a public relations gesture, the Fine Bros toss like $10,000 or something into it, and a few other big YouTubers like tossed in some really big amounts. Like, the vast majority of the fund came from big public donations from YouTubers and other people who kind of did it partly as well. I don't want to be cynical, but some of them did do it just as PR gestures. And after like the initial kind of, you know, buzz of H3H3 being sued wears down, those people aren't going to be making repeat donations. That's a one-off thing. And like a tiny proportion of the fund has been just from like donations from day-to-day people just donating like because they wanted to, like a few dollars at a time. As soon as the big amount of money that's been injected up front is gone, this fund will be vastly underfunded. So it's not necessarily a long-term solution. Now, the reason I'm talking about this at all, and the reason it's important, is because this is, as far as I'm aware, the first time that two YouTubers are actually going to end up in court against each other, arguing over what constitutes fair use, what is or is not fair use. Fair use being the idea that you're allowed to kind of make use of other people's material within certain limitations. Like, if you're clearly doing it for parody, or you only show little bits of it, and, you know, it's purely for demonstrative or parodic purposes, then that's supposed to be okay. Now, this has always been an interesting thing for YouTube, because vast parts of YouTube depend upon the idea of fair use being a legitimate, legally backed, important concept, especially reaction channels, where you can take someone else's work and then re-upload them, but in some form of slightly transformative way, and that's all fine. A lot of people have said this is a big deal for gaming YouTube as well. Kind of, but not anywhere near as big. The thing is, like, I do not put videos up and rely upon fair use as a defense. I put a video up because either the publisher of that video, not the developer technically, it does not that the developer doesn't matter. Like, if the developer specifically stated, we don't really like YouTube, then I tend to kind of, you know, respect that developer's wishes and not do things. But technically, the legal owner and the person who makes these decisions is the publisher. If the publisher of the work gives you permission to put videos up, you can put videos up. And some publishers have just put like blanket permissions up, like Deep Silver or Digital Devolver or Ubisoft, or more recently even Microsoft, pretty much, albeit with some minor restrictions about stuff you have to write in the video description. They've basically given blanket permission saying, yes, you may make videos of this. So when I make, say, a Ubisoft video, I am not dependent on the defense of fair use, saying, no, it's totally fair use because it's transformative and I'm not showing the whole thing, I'm cutting bits out. I am making that entirely legally, completely outside of any fair use argument because Ubisoft has given me permission. And I'll pretty much never make a video unless I've actually contacted, in the case of an indie game like the developer themselves, or in the case of a big game, the publisher themselves, saying, could you just kindly confirm you give me permission for videos to be made, uploaded to YouTube, and monetized under the standard YouTube partner program, which is just the system that lets me kind of run little ads, sort of either pre-rolls or the banner ads. And they'll say yes 99.9% of the time, and 0.1% of the time they'll say no, and then that video won't get made because my channel security is like the most important thing. Like, I'm not going to go putting up videos that I'm not allowed to put up. So as a result, the only videos that are on the channel are the one where there's been some form of permission given for it to be made. So we've actually got this rather less than optimal scenario where we've actually got a legal case going before a court, and that's assuming it does make it to court. I would not be surprised if someone bottled it and it ended up in a bit of a settlement or something. More likely, by the sounds of it, now that H3H3 have got a lot of money behind them that they haven't had to front themselves, Matt Voss will probably back down over this whole situation, and it'll kind of just go away very, very quietly for like just a token settlement out of court just to make the whole business die down. I doubt he wants the negative press against the channel. I doubt he really wants the fuss of taking it all to court. But if it does go to court, then that's important because that means there's going to be a legal precedent set about like how fair use and YouTube videos and reaction channels interact. Now that's, as I say, not perfect because reaction channels are, to my mind, like the channel where, though their defense is fair use, because reaction channels overwhelmingly do not contact the original person and say, hey, is it okay if I make a reacts to video, which is what pretty much all gaming YouTubers will do. Instead, they just take the video and then they kind of add their own comedy and they say, this is a reaction video, this is fair use because it's for humorous purposes or what have you. Again, that's not perfect because honestly, I feel like I'm not 100% sure like React channels, some React channels at least, should be covered by fair use because there are React channels out there, and like fairly recently some of the videos that kind of went quite big by what's his name, Grade A Under A, the guy who kind of made the videos kind of attacking React channels, the ones who reacted to him, he basically pointed out various React channels where blatantly people had just taken this entire video, re-uploaded them in full with their little face cam in the bottom right, and they'd like added like just a few words of reaction to the middle and the end. And at that point, that's blatantly not fair use, that's just stealing someone else's content and putting it up on your channel to try and get views. Of all the channels that are out there, H3H3's work probably has a good kind of argument for saying this is transformative because they add their own little bit onto the middle and the beginning and the end, and they frequently cut away from the video to add them kind of, you know, talking about it and doing a parody of it and mocking it and something. But even then, like, I think it's really questionable whether that ought to be fair use. Because if they show the concept behind the video in the beginning, and they show the ending of the video within their video, and they show what happened during the video, even if they're cutting away from it on a regular basis, even if they're adding their own footage, there's literally no reason why after watching a Reacts to video, you'd go back and watch the original. Because you already know everything that happens in that video. So in some ways, I don't know if that even should be fair use, because reaction channels do not fundamentally drive more people to go and check out the original video, which kind of strikes me as that would be what was fair in the ecosystem. And sometimes the bigger reaction channels, it feels a little bit close to bullying to my liking, because sometimes you get these reaction channels that have like, you know, 1.5 million, 2 million subscribers, and they take a video from YouTubers that have like, you know, low hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and they mock them and tear them apart, and then basically give the people who watch that no reason to go back and watch the original whatsoever. And at that point, basically, they've just taken the original video and potentially on their reaction channel got more views on the reaction than the original actual creator of that content got in the first place. So the original person's basically had their content stolen, the person who took it has made more views and thus more ad revenue out of it than they did in the first place, and then they're kind of claiming, oh, but it's okay for me to do that because of face. I don't like reaction channels, personally. I never watch reaction channels. Like, I only ever kind of go and look at this stuff when it's actually, like, in the YouTube news or there's a risk it's actually going to come to court. 'Cause if it comes to court, that's an important legal precedent because that will affect how these arguments are deployed in future. But in this case, I just kind of want to stay out of this one because even with the transformative work they do, I'm not convinced H3H3 is particularly fair use. I think all reaction channels are basically not necessarily kind of working within what ought to be fair use. I think they are kind of being a little bit unfair to the original videos that they mock. And honestly, I think many of these reaction channels just like really thrive on just constantly baiting controversy and drama. And you can kind of see it if you kind of look at a reaction channel. Very often, like a very significant portion of the videos are them sort of like solemnly talking to camera about how this person who they made a reaction video of, you know, they took it down, isn't that really unfair? And oh, we've decided to take down this video because we thought we were being unfair. It's non-stop controversy and drama bait, and I just don't like it. I don't like reaction channels at all. And that doesn't mean I'm going to go over to Matt Voss's side, because Matt Voss's videos are weird and cringeworthy, and he takes himself very, very seriously, which is very, very odd. Like, you know, when I was trying to figure out who this guy is, I kind of watched him, like, doing, like, a backstage Q&A video that was on his channel, and, like, he takes it really seriously. He thinks his videos are art, and he is an artist, as he puts forward these clickbait titles and clickbait thumbnails, implying there's going to be sex and cleavage when there never is going to be sex, and maybe there'll be a bit of cleavage, where one bad actor goes up to another bad actor, and then they swap really bad pickup dialogue, and then it's implied they went to go and have sex off screen or so. It's just, no. I'm on nobody's side in this debate, and I really, really hope it doesn't come to court, because I don't really want the legal precedent to be set by a channel that arguably I don't think even ought to be covered by fair usage. Let's move on, because I don't like that subject at all. Questions, Total War Warhammer, how much will there be? I've already recorded up to part 10. I think it might go to part 12. I don't necessarily want to kind of get up to, like, any of the victory conditions. Because the thing is, the run I'm doing at the moment, the Empire run, like, you kind of just have to take over pretty much all of the old Imperial territories and chase off the Chaos blokes and kind of make sure you're controlling Sylvania. You don't have to have killed the vampire counts, but you need to control Eastern and Western Sylvania, either directly for yourself or through like military alliance or vassal status or what have you. So like at a certain point, there will kind of, I think, be like a clear point where I control like over half of the Empire, and at that point it's just a matter of time until I either steamroll or confederate the rest of the Empire and just kind of win by default. So like at that point I'll probably like end the series and move on to something else, because I've got like a whole bunch of Stellaris actually ready to go that's already been recorded, and I've really been loving Stellaris, so I'd kind of like to like mix up a little bit. I mean, the Total War Warhammer series has gone on really, really well, and I'll talk about that like a little bit later, but yeah, I'd kind of like to probably take it up to maybe like part 12 or 13 or something, the point at which, where after that point, clearly I'm just going to be wrapping up the rest of the campaign, and then we'll probably end it and go over to something else, though we may come back to it later as a different race. Spore! Someone asked after Spore. Spore will be a series at some point. I haven't decided exactly when. Like, I wouldn't mind it being like a week of Spore, where like through Monday through to Friday, we actually handle each of the 5 stages in a single day, which I know would be like incredibly inefficient, because I'm not sure how long it actually takes to get up to like the 5th stage. Probably longer than I'm giving it credit for, so that's probably like a really bad way of thinking about it. But I wouldn't mind doing like a week of Spore where like each of the big stages was a separate day of the week, and we kind of did it that way. That kind of might be fun. I need to kind of have a think about that. Sins of a Solar Empire, someone was asking after. I have never played that, but I've heard really, really, really great things. So I kind of might give it a go, because I'm kind of like, I'm really on a bit of a strategy game kick at the moment. I kind of want to see how that all goes. We've got Total War at the moment, which has gone pretty well. Then we've got Stellaris coming up, which I kind of just mentioned. And then we've got, someone actually mentioned elsewhere, someone mentioned the Banner Saga. Funny you should mention that, by the way. I've already got one, and I just took delivery of a code for Banner Saga 2. And I agree, I think that looks really, really cool. So I want to give that a go. Because people seem to really enjoy it when I play the big strategy games. And I'm planning to play like Civilization. And I've never played Civilization before. And so like, I think I like played like someone else's copy like for a few hours, like years and years ago. I've totally forgotten about it now. So I might kind of do like Civilization 5 a bit on the channel ahead of Civilization 6, which I believe now has a November this year release date, if I recall correctly. So we'll kind of see how those all go, because like if people genuinely enjoy that stuff's relatively easy to record, and thus makes kind of a good like second video for the day. If there's going to be like 2 videos in a day, one of them being like that makes it relatively easy to do, which is quite nice. So if Stellaris and Total War go well, then potentially, yes, Sins of a Solar Empire or Banner Saga might actually come up next, we'll see. Though I'm not sure, like, maybe Total War just happens to be, like, popular with a large proportion of the community, in which case maybe I'll go back and do some Medieval 2 or one of the Rome expansion packs or something, I'm not sure. Do I watch other Fallout YouTubers? On occasion, if they put out something that's, like, really, really interesting. Like, I do quite like some of the Nth Apple's stuff, where he does, like, the lore videos. Some of those can be quite interesting, and I think he puts them together pretty well. So I do kind of enjoy those. But for the most part, like, I don't really watch most people's, like, full Let's Plays. I quite enjoyed NerdCube's complete series of Fallout 4, because it's really interesting to see kind of what someone who's much more new to the franchise, like, and is thus completely fresh-eyed about it, kind of what they see and what they take away from it. I find that very, very interesting, because, you know, a lot of, like, the big Fallout YouTubers come into it with a lot of expectations from Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and thus that gives us a different context to it. Seeing someone come at it, like, who clearly really loves it, but is coming at it from a completely fresh perspective, the way he reacts to it is very, very interesting. But for the most part, like, because I play a lot of Fallout, I prefer to play it by myself and learn by doing, and then if, like, there's something which I don't get, I'll often look it up in, like, the Fallout wiki or try and find a video that specifically addresses that point, but I don't watch much in the way of, like, long-form Fallout stuff myself. What are the negative things about YouTube, someone asked? I've spoken a little bit about this before, but, like, I did kind of think of one recently, so I'm glad this kind of came up. And the thing about YouTube is, if you ever do anything just, like, nice, if you do, like, a one-off thing, like, as a gift, because you kind of just want it to be a nice thing for the community, there will be a vocal minority of people who, for the rest of time, will now expect that to be the new normal and will complain because it didn't become the new normal. So let's say for a given week, I put out 2 videos a day, so there were 14 videos in that week. The following week, if I then put out 2 videos a day on half the days of the week and on the other half just one, there'll be people in the comments of the video on the days when it was only one video saying, where's today's second video? And they will be really, really snippy about it, because last week they got 2 videos a day, every day, so why aren't they getting it this week? And you see it with, like, you know, like, very often, like, the Fallout videos I put out are like 40 minutes to an hour. Now, if I ever put out one that's half an hour, there are people straight down in the comments saying, why so short? Why is this video so short? And it's because they've got used to the videos being quite long, so now if the video is ever half an hour, even if it's tightly edited in a very focused part, and, you know, just as much stuff happens as would have happened in a 40-minute video, it's just been more tightly edited, they're still complaining about it. They'll never be happy that you've given them longer videos or more videos. They'll just be sad and angry later if you ever take it away, which is why, like, I've always resisted the urge to ever, like, do, like, say, like, for the more old-fashioned Fallout, say for Fallout 3 on New Vegas, move that over to 2 episodes a week. Because if I ever moved over to 2 episodes a week, it would have to stay 2 episodes a week for the rest of time, because if it ever didn't, and it went back to 1 episode a week, there would be huge amounts of people who would just complain as to why it wasn't 2 episodes a week anymore. That kind of level of, I guess entitlement is a word you could use to describe it, where people, like, if you kind of step up your game, and you give people better quality, or more, or longer videos, then once you've done it once, you better keep doing it forever, or they're going to complain about it. That's kind of one of the more annoying things about YouTube, because those people are basically nothing but negativity in the comments. Like, they're never positive about when you give them more stuff, but they're negative the moment it goes away again. So, yeah, that's kind of one of the negative things. And it doesn't happen very much. It's a really tiny minority of comments, but I think there's a really good Oatmeal comic about being a content creator that kind of points out very well, which is like, you know, if 99% of your comments are really, really positive, but there's 1% that are really, really critical, you dwell on that 1%, because, like, it's fundamentally in the nature of the beast. If you're putting something out there, if you've created something and you put it out there, you're more keenly aware of and you feel criticism more kind of closely and painfully than you do praise. And I think that's just kind of, you know, maybe that's just part of the human condition, or maybe it's just all YouTubers are fundamentally fragile, neurotic little flowers. I don't know. Someone asked me what I thought the advantages of doing a classics degree are. Can be useful in pub quizzes, and you look pretty smart when you're watching University Challenge and kind of playing along at home with other people, because classics questions kind of come up on a not irregular basis in that, which is very, very useful. Though, more seriously, it's useful to know Latin especially, because Latin is a very kind of regular language, and it also is kind of the language that underpins large parts of Western European languages. So if you kind of understand Latin and how it fits together, and its vocabulary, then you can kind of, you have a good foundation upon which to build an understanding understanding of parts of French or Spanish, or not so much German or English. They kind of evolved separately, but like quite a few different European languages dotted around Europe, you can kind of pick up parts of them. Though, to be honest, like for me, going to university isn't about the advantage of classics. To me, going to university was the advantage of getting a good degree. Because if you go to a good university and you get a good degree, you're not actually learning that particular subject. It shouldn't be vocational, and especially if it's classics, it shouldn't be vocational. But in general, I think, like, unless you're doing like a science degree, say, it probably shouldn't be vocational. It's more about learning how to think, learning how to analyze, how to do critical thinking, how to argue and debate. Like, coming away with those skills is way more valuable than coming away with any specific set of facts. What are my thoughts on the EU referendum? Oh, bloody hell. First Matt Voss versus H3H3. Now this, you're really throwing the hard questions at me this time. I really hate the EU referendum. I really genuinely hate it, because the thing about it is, it's all based on theoreticals. Like, the people who want to stay in the EU are saying, well, we've got to stay in the EU because if we leave, the following things will happen. And they don't know those things are going to happen because no country's ever left the EU before, so no one really knows what will happen or how the negotiation afterwards would go or anything. Like, constitutionally, for everyone involved, it's a great big unknown when nobody knows what will happen next. And leave saying, oh, we've got to leave because if we could be separated from the EU, we'll be able to do this, that, and the other one will be able to renegotiate these treaties. And they don't know. Of course they don't bloody know. They're trying to argue for and against a thing that has never happened before, and thus for which there is no evidence and no model. This is a complete, total unknown for both sides, and yet both sides are arguing as if they absolutely know with certainty what is going to happen. And they have an equal right to, because none of them do. So, you know what? Why not argue that the sky's going to collapse and that France will immediately invade Portugal, and if we leave, then everyone will have gold money instead of hair? I don't know. It doesn't matter, because it's all completely theoretical and nobody knows. Like, I personally will vote to stay in, because I live in a household where there is a French person, and I don't want there to be a visa system that starts saying, you know what, unless you earn a certain amount of money, you can't stay here. Even if you've peacefully lived here for years and you've built a life here and you have friends and families and a job and connections, you just have to go now because the rules have just suddenly changed. I don't think that's fair to a very large number of people who live here now, and I don't really want people I know, not just Kleb, other people I know who are from the EU as well, to have to go through that. But I don't have like a desperately strong opinion of what way it's going to go, like whose arguments of doom and gloom or amazing hope and prosperity are more likely to come to fruition, because either could, because it's a total bloody unknown. So it's a horrible question. I think it's a really stupid thing to argue over, because you are debating about the future in a situation where there is no evidence to support either side whatsoever. So yeah, I find it a little bit of a kind of an odd and annoying question, especially when so much attention and so much time in our press and on our TV is spent arguing over this, when neither side actually has any idea what's going to happen, but neither of them are, of course, are willing to admit that. It's just kind of annoying. Someone asked what would make a Fallout set in Britain work. Now, I think I mentioned this very, very briefly at some point during, I think it was actually during Fallout 3 Kill Everything? Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was during Fallout 3 You Only Live Once. I can't remember when I discussed this. I discussed this once when I was playing Fallout 3, but I can't remember which run it was. I think a British Fallout would work incredibly well, because the thing about Britain that's very, very unique and special relative to America is the number of guns is vastly, vastly lower. We have guns in this country. Farmers have licenses for shotguns. Some people can, you can apply for a license for a weapon if you want to do hunting in various forms. Some people have guns because gun sports are a thing, but vast majority of the time, guns are held by the police. But even then, only a very small minority of police officers hold guns. Like, we don't like guns in this country. We don't like other people holding guns. We don't like our police officers having guns. We're not really that cool with our police officers having tasers. We don't really like that. We like our police officers like having maybe a truncheon if we're feeling ballsy that day. And even then, steady on there, cowboy, let's not go nuts. So, relatively speaking, a post-apocalypse Britain would be a very, very unarmed society. And that leads to two very, very interesting conclusions on where you could take post-apocalypse Britain. And one is societal and one is cultural. On the societal side, that means that in terms of, like, if all law and order were to break down, then you're potentially looking at a scenario where the establishment is able to secure itself in Britain much, much better than the old world was, say, in Fallout 3 over in America, where kind of everything a bit went to hell, and then it all went a bit Mad Max, and everyone had guns and strapped saucepans to their breasts, because of course they did, because raiders and fiends and whatever. In Britain, in a scenario where everything breaks down, in a world where the police and the army have guns, but nobody else does, then potentially kind of an armed, militaristic little mini-state within Britain that is manned and protected by, the police and the army, where potentially the old world people who had money or influence or whatever could still live a very pre-war existence, is entirely feasible. But outside of that world, nobody's gonna have a gun. Nobody's gonna have a gun. And that leads us into the cultural aspect, which is, culturally, in this country, a gun is a source of fear. We don't like people with guns. If you walk into an area and you've got a gun on site, like even sheathed by your side, you have power vastly beyond anyone else that's gonna be in that street. Massively so. Nobody else is going to have a gun. Guns are incredibly rare. But that's got a flip side, which is if you walk into a new settlement and you've got a gun slung over your shoulder, everyone is going to fear you, because guns are not going to be a part of day-to-day life. Guns are terrifying murder machines, and we don't like them. Nobody's going to like you if you've got a gun. If the word gets around that you've just got a pistol hidden inside your jacket, the whisper goes around about that, people are not going to want to do business with you. Shops are going to refuse to sell to you. You being armed completely changes how all of society views you. And I think that's a really interesting place that Fallout's never really been before, where like a single gun, just carrying one gun into a location, is a source of huge advantage, but also a source of huge fear and social isolation. I think that's a really interesting place to start from. The idea that, like, when you're going around the vast majority of settlements and people, even you having a gun makes you, terrifying, whereas there would be these little enclaves of society where actually there's huge amounts of firearms, and how on earth, therefore, are you going to take them on? Which is, if you want to try and do this in the traditional Fallout way, where you just kind of go in and you shoot through your problems and what have you, as in like the Fallout 4's base game or large parts of Fallout 3, then good luck, because you're going to be massively outgunned, and for every person you kill, your reputation with pretty much everyone is going to go further and further down. Nobody's going to like you for doing that. Your life's going to get harder and harder. So potentially instead you need to go through it in a much more kind of pacifist way and try and figure out how to work with people. Or maybe you could try and convince people to start taking up arms. Maybe you could actually lead an insurrection and actually kind of try and bring some sort of weird right to bear arms fury to the British people, and see if you could try and get people more comfortable with weapons. I think it's a really fascinating starting point for a game. I'd love to see a British Fallout DLC at some point or other. Someone asked about whether I'll kind of at some point pick up more challenge runs in non-Bethesda games. Well, I wrote a really smart answer and then I realised that it's not really going to work, which is, well, actually, at some point I'm vaguely planning to do a challenge run in Dishonored. And then I remember Dishonored was also by Bethesda, so that didn't work very well. But yeah, I kind of like think challenge runs kind of fits into this talk about like strategy games, because like I'm going to see how like doing a few different like strategy game runs just kind of works, because people seem to really like those. And then like after I've done a couple of those, maybe I'll bring a challenge run back in, and I'll try and see like which the community likes better, and we'll kind of try and mix them together a little bit. Fallout faction that deserves a bit more love and expansion: the Legion. Simply, it's the Legion, because I feel like the Legion, well, we know canonically the Legion, like, the content was not really finished. Even though there are mods to expand a little bit, we know Obsidian just didn't really have the time to make the raw assets and whatever that they wanted to do for the Legion. And the thing is, like, you can just sort of vaguely see some slight hints that the Legion was supposed to be not just the evil crucifying villain lots. Like, when you talk to some people who have been to Legion territory, they say, well, okay, fine, they kind of went for and murdered everyone, but after they did, the roads were safe, the societies had food and water, and the roads were safe to go along. Actually, the society's a lot more secure than the areas the NCR have moved into, and you kind of feel like there was supposed to be some sort of we were supposed to, the first time we meet the Legion, crucifying people in Nipton, we're supposed to think, oh my god, they're monsters, and then actually, if you go into it, you're supposed to realize, actually, okay, they're really bloody hardline, but this is also a crazy post-apocalyptic society with raiders and whatever everywhere, and after they've been through this horrible process of cleansing the land, is potentially what's left a generation later going to be a better place to live or not? And we never really got that question at all, and no one really bothered to answer. Instead, the Legion kind of got relegated to villains in Fallout New Vegas, and really, if you're playing as them, you are kind of role-playing as the villains. And if you want to, in your head when you're playing as the Legion, do this whole, this is for the long-term best, that's fine, but let's be clear, that's you making up a headcanon, because there's very little in the text to support that opinion. But I would love to see them expanded a little bit. I'd love to see Obsidian get hold of the Fallout 4 engine and make a sequel to Fallout New Vegas, maybe set in the NCR itself, maybe set in an advanced post-New Vegas era NCR, where the remnants of the Legion are still floating around somewhere, and we actually get to learn a little bit more about them. That there would be very, very cool indeed. Speaking of Fallout, Bethesda called me up and asked me for the location for Fallout 7. I don't know what happened to Fallout 5 or 6. I don't know. Maybe we know what. Maybe one of them was in Britain. It would be great. Seattle. I want a Fallout game actually set in Seattle. I know there's a Fallout 4 mod set in Seattle. I'll probably go and look at it at some point. But honestly, I want a proper one where, a team of professional level designers has built it in Seattle. I want the aquarium to be full of giant mutated sea otters. I want the main settlement to be Pike Place Market. I want Tully's Coffee to be a regular pickup. And I want a mad cult in Fremont who genuinely believe Fremont is the centre of the universe. What is my least favourite series on the entire channel? Well, this one probably will surprise you. It's Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything. I think the commentary is pretty good by the standards of, you've got to remember, when I started making that series, I'd only been making videos for about 3 months. I've been making videos for 3 months, and before that, I had no background in, film production or voiceover work or anything. That was the first time I'd ever really put my hand to making videos or doing commentary or voiceover work or anything, and 3 months later, I made Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything, and under those conditions, it's really good. By the standards of today's channel and what I could do today, it's terrible. It's really bad. The commentary is kind of muted and awkward. The editing is low quality. Some of the jokes are very laboured, and sometimes there are whole periods without any kind of jokes whatsoever. I didn't even really understand what needed to go into a Kill Everything series to make it work. Maybe by part 10, 11 and 12, I'd vaguely started to see how a Kill Everything series had to work to make it work as comedy. And that's good, because that means when we got into Fallout 3 Kill Everything, which I think is probably my first series that I say to this day, this is a good series, this holds up. That's why it was good from the get-go, because Vault 101 I think is a good solid opening. By the time we get up to part, I think it's 4, is the Valentine's Day Massacre, and then the gnoming incidents in the Tower in part 3, and then the introduction of the Great Brit Ant in part 8, and Dance With Your Dad, Timmy, Dance With Your Dad in part 7, as well as Andel in part 7. That's a fantastic series, right from the get-go. The first, 8 parts of Fallout 3 Kill Everything are genuinely brilliant, and some of the best videos I've ever made. And probably, I think, part 7, The Practical Guide to Parenting, will remain among the best videos I've ever made for a very, very long time to come. That will always be one of my favourite videos I've ever put together. But Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything, especially, the first 6 to 8 parts, are very, very flimsy. And that's kind of why I would like to remaster them at some point or other. And the reason why it bugs me is because it ranks really, really highly on Fallout New Vegas. In fact, it's kind of pretty much one of the most regularly watched series I've got. Fallout 3 Kill Everything technically has more views on it. But Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything ranks really highly if you just search for Fallout New Vegas in YouTube, whereas Fallout 3, if you search Fallout 3, Fallout 3 Kill Everything does not. It's one of the most high visibility series I've got, and it's also one of my least favourite. So it really bugs me that lots of people, the first chance they'll ever have to be exposed to Many a True Nerd is this old series that's not very good. So it kind of bothers me. Though, obviously, given what I've just saying, as you won't be surprised to hear that my most favourite series is Fallout 3 Kill Everything. Not just because there's some fantastic episodes in there, but because, like, I think that's the first series I got it, and everything, like, clicked into place, and I figured out how to make a good series. And I figured out the channel. I figured out what, like, the tone should be. I figured out how my voice should be on the channel. Like, Fallout 3, like, maybe it starts off a little shakily in places. By 7 or 8 parts into it, I pretty much nailed, like, how I make a series, and that's really, really important. I think, like, that's the template from which, like, the entire channel has grown from that point. And that was pretty much, like, at the same point in history when I, like, did the LA Noire series, which I think is the first of my big, long series that I think is genuinely excellent and also holds up today really, really nicely. It stacks up beautifully. So LA Noire, like, yeah, that period in the channel's history when we did both LA Noire and Fallout 3 Kill Everything, that's the point where I think I figured out how to make good videos. And I think everything before that is a bit shaky and we were still figuring out how to do it, and everything after that is in the period which I call, this is the good period. I'm not saying it's all great, and I'm not saying, like, it's as good then as things are today, because I think, like, as a channel person, I've grown a lot, and, you know, you should always be improving. And I think, like, I've improved a lot, like, as time goes on. I'm still improving. Like, I look at stuff from 3 months ago and I think, oh, if I'd done that today, it would have been better. And as it should be, it absolutely should be. Like, if you look at something you did a year ago and think, yeah, that's just as good as something I do today, that just means you haven't improved in the last year, and that's bad. So, but I'd say, like, that's the period when I think, that's when I draw the line, where I say everything before this point, let's just quietly forget about it, and everything after this point, yeah, okay, this is when Many a True Nerd became Many a True Nerd, as far as I'm concerned. What's my take on the UK and the US current political situation? You guys are really liking asking me mean questions this month. Bloody hell. My take on UK and US politics. Well, my biggest takeaway is we're in a really interesting era of anti-politics, which is the political class has become, and I think this is true in both UK and US, at this point, the kind of the traditional political class, the traditional political system, and, like, the old niceties and sureties of, like, a two-party system. Because, you know, we've got Labour and the Conservatives over here, and you've got the Democrats and the Republicans over there. At this point, those kind of, that old comfortable political status quo has become so distrusted to the point of actively being hated by a large number of people that people actively despise not just them but the entire political system. And as a result of that, we're getting the rise of kind of more and more outsiders, whether that be Donald Trump coming in on the US Republican side, or Bernie Sanders launching a very strong challenge to Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Meanwhile, in the UK, on the left, our Labour Party was just kind of, and is now being led by Jeremy Corbyn, who, technically, he's not that extreme. He's like a traditional social democrat in the mould of, like, the 1970s into 80s Labour social democrats, but probably by your standards, if you're American, probably don't look up Jeremy Corbyn's policies, because by your standards, he's probably a terrifying communist or something, because, you know, we in Europe are a little bit more left-wing, social democratic leaning than you are in the US, so you'd probably find Jeremy Corbyn utterly terrifying. Meanwhile, like, on our more to the right wing, obviously, our Conservatives are being troubled by the rise of the UK Independence Party, a much more kind of nationalist and populist movement. Nowhere near as extreme as some of the nationalist and populist movements that have been kind of showing up all over the rest of Europe, whether that be the Front National in France, who are, they're pretty much fascists. They are pretty much fascists, or Golden Dawn, who again are pretty much neo-Nazi fascists in Greece. And that has been happening a little bit. And our new left-wing extreme, Jeremy Corbyn, and I was just doing the quotey things with my fingers there, is nowhere near as extreme as, is it called Podemos? Where basically there is a quite far left-wing, I'm not sure they're actually technically communist, but they're kind of getting there, left wing over in Spain, and meanwhile there's the Alternative for Deutschland over in Germany, who again are quite strong right-wing, very anti-immigrant position over in Germany, a kind of a very strong reaction against the establishment. I think, like, not just in the US and the UK, but in, like, across all of Europe as well, and a lot of the advanced Western democracies, there is a dissatisfaction with business as usual in politics, and a lot of outsiders and other kind of people who are a little bit more extreme and outside of the political mainstream are coming to the center and coming into focus a lot more, which is very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting indeed. Like, whether it will end well or not is not a question we can really answer. Like, I think it's a natural part of the political process, which is nothing is ever gonna last forever. Like, you may have a cozy consensus of a two-party system for a certain period of time, But in the end, people are going to get a bit bored by how kind of cozy and boring things have got at the top. And they're going to look for something a bit more extreme to sort out their problems. History tends to go that way. People look for something different and they give it a go. And the overwhelming majority of the time, it fizzles out without doing anything particularly interesting. You know, people just kind of look at the boring old political status quo and say, hey, that guy over there says that we can do this one thing and it'll solve all our economic problems. Let's all vote for him. And they vote for him. And then he gets a couple of years in power. Then he fails to do anything he said he was going to do. And then gets caught in a massive corruption or embezzlement scandal. And they say, oh, that's probably why none of the existing people who are our politicians were doing that thing already then, because actually it didn't solve anything. And I suspect we'll see the same thing. Like, over the coming decade, I imagine we'll see a lot of quite extreme views on both sides of the spectrum being elected across Europe and America. I think there's a very real possibility you guys could see President Trump over the next year, which will be interesting. Very, very interesting. And that means a lot of new ideas that haven't been tested for quite a long time are going to be tested. A lot of them will probably come up with bad results, and some of them might come up with good results, and the pendulum will swing the other way, and everyone will vote a different direction, and we'll try and give something else a go for a bit. That's just how democracy works. It swings around, and we vote for different things. But right now, I think just by coincidence, perhaps, or maybe because there was, the big economic crash of 2008 that a lot of economies have struggled to recover from, and that's not because they've really struggled to recover from it, it's more just because before that point, a lot of advanced Western countries had like 2 decades of relative prosperity and boom, and that's come to a bit of an end. And now I think, what a lot of politicians are too scared to say is maybe that wasn't the normal state of affairs. Maybe we just had that for 20 years. We had like 2 decades of relative economic boom and everyone got used to it. And now we don't really know how to say to voters, actually, that might have just been like a historical anomaly and that's not actually the new normal. Maybe actually these new lower living standards are the new normal. Oops, sorry, because that's not a very electable message. But it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. And by interesting, I mean possibly terrifying, because, scenarios like that, when people are feeling frustrating and voting for more extreme outside the mainstream people, on occasion, I'm not saying any particular person is this person, but just on occasion, you end up with dictators who commit genocide. Just on occasion that happens. Hopefully, over the next decade, that won't happen. But we'll see. What's the best tool with which to learn Latin? Oh, the Cambridge Latin course. Get the Cambridge Latin course. Caecilius est in tablino. Command & Conquer. I've never played it. Well, that's a lie. I've played it for 10 minutes at one point, and I didn't get immediately into it. In that era of history, I was more into the original StarCraft than Command & Conquer, so I never really played Command & Conquer. Maybe one day I'll give it a look, but I get the feeling that's a game where the people who want to see me play it are just going to be really frustrated by me if I'm a total noob at it, so I don't know if that's a good idea. What is my favourite Greek play? Hippolytus. I'd say probably Hippolytus. By Euripides. I love that play because it's really, really action-packed. A lot of stuff happens. A lot of good plays are a little bit, even the really good ones can be just a little bit slow on occasion. I absolutely love the Bacchae. Euripides' Bacchae. I think it's an absolutely fantastic play, and you study it, there's loads and loads of layers to it. But if you see it staged, it's quite a slow play and not a huge amount actually happens. Whereas Hippolytus is relatively action-packed. There's just stuff that's happening constantly. And that's just my favourite tragedy, therefore. My favourite comedy, for one of the same reasons, is actually probably Menander's Dyskolos. And I've never seen it staged, which is a huge shame, because Menander is almost never staged. But Menander's Dyskolos, oh my goodness, there is an action-packed play. Stuff never stops happening in Menander's Dyskolos. Brilliant play. But you're also asking about if I'd seen a play staged and how it really frustrates me. No, I've seen some really good stagings of Hippolytus. I once saw one that was staged in Oxford in a very small room where just occasionally Artemis, the goddess Artemis, who's kind of directing things from behind the scenes, and Aphrodite as well, would kind of come up onto the stage and literally just kind of grab the actors and just kind of toss them into a brick wall, because this was a stage where there was no sides to the stage off a curtain. It was literally a small brick room, and the goddesses would just walk kind of along the aisle onto the stage, and the actors would not acknowledge them, and they would just grab the actors and just toss them bodily into the wall. They was very well. Either the actors did actually just kind of take a few bruises for the sake of art, or they were very good at acting, because those impacts sounded like they hurt. And it was a brilliant idea to stage it that way. I loved it. The problem with staging, however, comes in Antigone. Which is, I've never seen a good Antigone. I've seen Antigone staged 5 or 6 times, and the problem is everyone misunderstands Antigone. because everyone thinks when they kind of read Antigone, they think Antigone is the good guy and King Creon is the bad guy. The tragedy there comes from the fact that both of them have a point, and both of them are doing what they genuinely believe to be right, and both of them have a really solid argument for why what they're doing is right. But because they clash against each other, they end up destroying each other, and they don't even really mean to. It just sort of happens. That's kind of where the tragedy comes. But what you see a lot is, Creon is the bad guy, and what almost every modern theatre reinterpretation of Antigone does is it sets it in a new modern context where Creon comes on wearing flipping military dictator clothes, making it clear he's supposed to be a military dictator, which immediately recontextualizes him as what we are understood immediately to know is the bad guy. And that's wrong and it's stupid. And the moment a play does that, I think, well, I'm not watching this. Screw this. The moment I see someone saying, hey, we're doing a new version of the Antigone. New version of Antigone, that'll be cool. And Creon's a military dictator. No, you messed it up again, you losers. Read the bloody text, for God's sakes. Antigone, never ever staged correctly. Annoys the hell out of me. And one follow-up question to that one. Someone asked, masks. Masks in tragedy. When people put Greek plays on stage, should they use masks? No, they shouldn't. The thing is, in the original Greek, fine, they had masks, but that's because they understood people always had masks on, so for them it was normal. For us, because we're not used to people wearing the comedy or tragedy style masks, as a result of that, to us it looks alien and it's distracting and it takes away from the performance. So, we should not be using masks today because it just distracts the audience. Editing. How did I learn to edit my videos? Simply learn by doing. That's all it is. There's I never found a good guide or anything. Literally just learn by doing. Some of my early videos are really bad. They're badly edited. It's scruffy editing work. So literally, you just have to learn by doing. Cooking videos. Someone asked for more cooking videos. Well, good news. There was one just the other day for the channel anniversary. They also asked whether I was allowed to use Claire's K-Mix. No, I'm not allowed to use Claire's K-Mix. And you may notice I didn't use it at any point during the video because I apparently can't even be trusted to use Claire's nice cookware without scratching the hell out of it. So that's a shame. Would I like my hands to be made out of ham that never goes off, or my armpits to permanently dispense sun cream? Well, obviously the armpits thing. If my hands were made out of ham, then I've effectively just given up all my opposable digits, and at that point, I'm pretty much cripplingly disabled for my entire life. I won't be able to type, I wouldn't be able to play games, I wouldn't be basically the channel's done. Whereas if my armpits just kind of slowly dispense sun cream, well, I could just rig a contraption up to my armpits. I could just kind of wear baby's nappies under my armpits and change them on a semi-regular basis. It would be annoying, but I would still be able to basically function. So obviously the armpit thing. What lesser known games am I looking forward to in 2016? Here's a few I've got my eye on. I believe these are all indie games. I just keep an eye on upcoming indie games and I just add them to my calendar. 3 I've got added to my calendar right now is All Walls Must Fall, which is this kind of tech-noir strategy game, which might turn out to be alright. The Wild 8, which is a kind of survival cannibal 'em up, set in the mountain range after a plane crash, which kind of looks good. And Beat Cop, which looks like a very boring, mundane, day-to-day police simulator where you go around handing out parking tickets and stuff, which looks like just my sort of thing. City Skylines, will I ever do a City Skylines series? Yes, absolutely. Not soon, I don't have a timescale, but given how well SimCity 4 did, totally, there's going to be a City Skylines series. Metal Gear! Why have I never done Metal Gear? Me and Metal Gear fell out, which is back on the GameCube days. I'd never played Metal Gear before, and then Metal Gear The Twin Snakes came out, so I bought that at launch for full price, and I played it, and it was so bad that me and Metal Gear fell out that day, and we've never made up since. I hate Metal Gear to this day, because of how bad The Twin Snakes is almost... I don't understand how bad it was. It's horrendous. It was just utter garbage. I hated that game so badly, and I never went back to Metal Gear because the Twin Snakes left such a bad taste in my mouth. I should probably go back and give a different one of them a go at some point. Total War. Someone asked, what is the best Total War game to start with if they've never played Total War before? If you really want to go back to the origins of modern Total War, the original Rome Total War was the first 3D one, and it's kind of the foundation upon which everything since has been built. And if you look at the original Rome Total War and you look at Total War Warhammer today, you can still see they're clearly related. The template that was invented with Rome Total War and its 3D campaign map and the way armies and settlements basically work, though it's been tweaked around a bit. Basically, you know, a large part of what was Rome Total War is still present in the series in Total War Warhammer. And Rome is, you know, I think it's still a good game. It's aged a bit scruffily, though. The one that's not brand new that people seem to regard very well is Shogun 2. I've never played it myself, but the consensus of the community seems to be that is like the best one. It's very, very well regarded. Now, I've never been too desperate to get into the Shogun ones of Total War because I really like my Total War games on a Europe map. I like marching around Europe because then I can take over Britain, and I like taking over Britain. Which makes me really like Medieval 2 Total War Britannia expansion, by the way. That's why I did that one in the April 1st video. Yeah, I've always quite liked that expansion. It's quite cool. But yeah, Shogun 2 seems to be well regarded. Or the new one. I think the new one is really, really good. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like Total War Warhammer, the combat is sublime. The overworld and management could do with a little bit of work. I think there's a little bit of balance issues that need to be fixed just for a couple of patches yet, potentially. But it's still damn solid. Startopia, someone asked after. I've never played it. Never played it. I will look into it, so I do not know at this time. Someone also mentioned they like it when I put in the occasional, like, that Mitchell and Webb look reference into my videos. I love that Mitchell and Webb look. And that person asked after other British comedy. If they liked that, what else might they like? If you want to go back to what I think was, like, possibly one of the series that probably is, like, one of the ancestors of that Mitchell and Webb look, I would look at Big Train, which was a British comedy sketch series, very kind of similar in format to that Mitchell and Webb look, kind of, you know, just like little sketches that have no kind of overarching story to them. It's also worth kind of having a look at, because a lot of, like, people who went on to be very big in comedy were in that in their very early days. Like, a fairly early in his career, Simon Pegg was in Big Train, so that might be worth kind of having a look at. I'd also recommend the work of Chris Morris, who did, like, some utterly brilliant and deeply weird and surreal parodies of kind of current affairs shows called The Day to Day and then Brass Eye. The nice thing about The Day to Day and Brass Eye is I know for a fact the entirety of The Day to Day is on YouTube. If you just search The Day Today on YouTube, you will find the full episodes. There were only 6 ever made. And then Brass Eye, I think there were 6 episodes and 1 special. I think they're on YouTube as well. I don't know about whether the whole of Big Train is on YouTube, but if you just search for Big Train on YouTube, you should find a lot of the sketches, at least. And some of them are just genius. What is my favourite quest line in the entirety of the Fallout franchise? I would say Beyond the Beef in New Vegas, and I just love it because there's so many options. You can play it so many different ways. You can just kind of go in there all guns blazing and sort it out that way. You can join up with the casino and just kind of join the, you know, the tribe of savage cannibals and just eat someone and be like, yep, I'm fine with this. You can sacrifice one of your own companions into the meat grinder. It's beautiful. And then eat, and then just sit down at the table and eat one of your own companions. It's magnificent. Or you can, like, treat it as a big, like, investigation. You can become the detective and treat it like a detective case. You don't have to, that's entirely optional. Or if you prefer, you can kind of turn it into a bit of a spy thriller and break it into the guy's room and set him up and turn it into a political thing. Oh, it's beautiful. There's just so many ways you can play it, and depending on how you play it, it completely changes the genre you're playing, whether it's mystery or spy or just kind of an action game. I just love it. Beautiful, magnificent question area, Beyond the Beef. Merchandise. People are asking after merchandise. I know. It's just like, it can't be a priority over anything else. Because the thing is, I know from speaking to other YouTube channels that have done merchandising makes, like, basically no money. It's just, like, a thing that's there because some people actually like it being there and want it to be there. But, like, the amount of money it makes is so tiny that it's really hard to justify putting a big amount of time into it. So when I've got some free time, I will look at it, but it's not going to be imminently. Speaking of Kill Everything Remastered, and when I say speaking of, I mean, like, you know, about half an hour ago or something, someone asked, when is the remastered series going to happen? I don't know. I think probably after New Vegas Survival, I'll probably at that point do one of the retro Fallouts. I might do the original Fallout 1. And then maybe after that, I don't know. And then to end on a total anticlimax, someone was asking after House of Cards. I've neither read the original novels it was based upon, nor seen the series, so I have literally no comment. And on that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very, very much for coming to this Patroncast, which was May's Patroncast and hopefully went out in May, unless I ran out of time today, in which case it went out tomorrow. And we were so close. So damn close if it went out on June the 1st. But hopefully this went out in May, and there will be another one coming in June very, very soon. Thank you all so very, very much for your questions. Do let me know your recommendations for collaborations if you have not already. I promise I will check out absolutely all of them. Do recommend yourself if you would like to. I will take all kind of suggestions perfectly seriously, and I will evaluate everything, and I'll kind of have a think about what I want to do with that. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I've been John. This has been Many a True Nerd, and this has been the May 2016 Patroncast. Thank you all so very, very much for keeping this crazy train going, and goodbye.